Science Student Association. Thank you guys for coming to this week's meeting. We're going to go over about the government shutdown, so whenever you guys want to jump in and talk and stuff, that would be awesome.
All right, for anybody who is new here, we do this every week at noon, and in a few minutes an attendance sheet will be passed around. If you put your name on it, that will verify your attendance here. And if you put a faculty name next to your name, I will contact that faculty member. Hopefully you can get credit for this. I can't guarantee that, but at least we can verify your attendance. All right, so what about the government shutdown? Is this going to go on forever? Who's worried about it?
I'm probably the only one that can really speak on an actual negative consequence personally. Me being in the National Guard, simultaneously being a cadet, I'm not likely going to get my paycheck for the foreseeable future for my drills, but this is impacting not just National Guardsmen, but the entire force. So the hastiness of getting an actual budget set is very, very important to a lot of the armed forces, so much so that they had to appropriate funds from research and development from the Pentagon to pay active duty troops, which was done like yesterday. So they've got no paychecks, but that's the only thing I've really got to put into it right now, basically.
I want to ask you a question. Like, how does this make you feel in the sense of, like, do you feel that you're being underrepresented because you're not being paid and the government's being held up?
Not so much. I feel like people are getting hung up on issues and they're just refusing to find a common ground that they can settle on for the time being and debate the more contentious issues later. I've heard issues such as immigration, funding, undocumented people in the nation, like healthcare and whatnot, being floated around, and that was like a contentious issue on the Democratic front. Things like that being like why we don't have a budget right now. And that's something that's just rather silly to me. I haven't been paying much attention to it until like we got closer to that deadline of like, hey, we're not October 15th, we're not getting paid, kind of thing. Like, okay, I need to figure out what's going on with this.
I guess I'll speak from my knowledge now. I mean, we've seen it's been rather controversial. I mean, we've even seen Marjorie Taylor Greene take a stance for healthcare privileges the other day, and like insurance, or making sure that insurance is covered, especially like through the Affordable Care Act. So for me, that signals it's getting a little ridiculous that we're having to have someone who's considered like far right, or I don't know about far right, but leaning to the right for sure, come out and advocate for government spending to make sure people get the money that they need and deserve, rather than holding things up. I think it's baby things. Like that's the only way I can really like describe how I feel about the government shutdown. It's like we're being big babies, and like people are facing real life consequences because of it.
I think what you said about like the undocumented immigrants getting the money, that's kind of a lie. Both sides are lying a lot during this, and it's making everything worse because no one trusts each other to actually do anything at this point. And like you said, there is a bit of big baby going on with this, but there is like, I saw the insurance. Depending if they don't pass the budget by next month, people are expected to pay $2,000 more a month for insurance because of the Affordable Care Act not funded.
It's starting to come to a point where even like people on the outskirts, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, are all kind of agreeing that something needs to happen. There's so many of them that are like they refuse to budge from their positions, and then that's causing this like wall that's affecting all of us as American citizens. I think it is kind of crazy. Like, not that Marjorie, I have nothing against necessarily anybody leaning towards any side, but the fact that I can agree with Marjorie Taylor Greene, who also is someone who mentioned space lasers causing forest fires, is kind of like a break in my brain there. Like, yeah.
All right, others?
Just go for it, man.
I'm thinking about taking devil's advocate stance here.
Okay.
Well, let's hear it. Come on. All right. Yeah. We haven't passed a stable budget in so long, and I mean, Pew Research says that we haven't passed a budget on time since like 2019, I think. So, I mean, the shock therapy is kind of necessary at this point. We kind of need Congress people to look at their constituents suffering to say, okay, I think we now need to work across the aisle. Because like this shutdown, if it goes really long, longer than the 2018 one, will actually, was it 2018? I don't know.
Yeah.
It was Trump's, the Trump one term. So if it goes long enough and constituents start suffering, I think that will provide the shock therapy for Congress people to finally realize that they need to pass a stable budget, they need to pass a budget on time, and actually work across the aisle. Because like right now, the whole complaint is about the 60 vote threshold filibuster rule. But like that's there in place so the minority party also gets a say in budgeting. It's not so the majority party can just do whatever they want. But now there's talks about like Marjorie Taylor Greene saying to use the nuclear option to remove that 60 vote threshold entirely, which is like we're eroding these protections of the minority party just because a budget that the majority party doesn't want to pass on time. We're going to remove these protections because of that. It's just the shock therapy, in my opinion, is necessary.
Yeah, the conventional wisdom is that things will start moving, or things won't begin to move until the public expresses some concern. And in the first few days or weeks, we're just kind of coasting on fumes. The momentum just carries along for the first few days, but after that, it might begin to affect people. Delays at airports, various kinds of government payments not being made, government contractors not getting paid, which might mean construction projects stopping. When the public is affected, that's when Congress will usually start to get active in trying to resolve it. And those of you who are either in or have taken either my American government class or my legislative process class, you know we've talked about these budgets. And yes, it's been a while. And in fact, over the last 45 years, it has been very rare for the Congress and President to reach an agreement on an entire budget before the budget year begins in October 1st. There's always some portion, or virtually always some portion, of the budget that remains unagreed to. When that happens, either Congress will pass a temporary continuing resolution, which simply says we're just going to keep going at current levels, or that portion of the government shuts down. And in many recent years, they haven't reached agreement on any of the bills by the time, any of the 12 or 13 spending bills by the time the new budget year begins. And again, that means either you pass a continuing resolution for the entire government, and we've had that for several years. We've had year-long continuing resolutions, no budget at all. In fact, 2025 is one of those. There were continuing resolutions from last year all the way through the rest of this year on September 30th. There was never any final budget for anything. And you either do these continuing resolutions or portions of the government begin to shut down. And that's what we're beginning to see. Go ahead.
I think it's, adding on to your point, with devil's advocate, first George Bush in presidency, he faced budget crisis. And he went back on a campaign promise to pass the budget because he had to increase taxes as part of the budget. And that should have been it's a bit of a wake up, but it's a great example of people putting ideology and their politics to the side to help more people, because that is incredibly detrimental to your political career when you run on that promise and you go against it.
One of the problems that we've seen in recent years that makes it even worse is many decades ago, back in the 70s and 80s and even in the 90s, when the House and Senate or the House and Senate President couldn't reach agreement on one or more of these spending bills, they would pass these continuing resolutions. But the continuing resolutions then lasted literally maybe hours, days, a week. And when you do that, just a very short-term continuing resolution, you just say, okay, we'll just kind of keep going where we're going, and that's it. But as we've gotten to these months-long and years-long continuing resolutions, then members of Congress or the president want to add new spending or make changes or add new programs. And so they are, in a sense, de facto budgets. And that makes it even harder to come to an agreement. Because, again, 45 years ago, the continuing resolution was, okay, we're working on a new budget, we'll just keep going along for a few more days until we get the new budget settled. But now it's, we can't get the new budget settled, so we're going to pass this continuing resolution, and it's going to go for months and months and months and months, and we know that. And that means people in Congress have a vested interest in saying, well, I want my new program included. I want this new funding included. I want other changes to funding included. And that makes it even harder because they're not just stretching out the same budget for a few days. They are now, in a sense, creating these brand new full temporary budgets. And that makes it even harder to come to an agreement. So, yeah, this is happening this year. Guess what's going to happen next year? I can think of 3 words. The first word is the. What are the other 2 words? Well, okay, that wasn't my third word, but yes, same thing. Okay, yeah. It's going to happen again. Yeah.
I guess I just want to be hopeful. To kind of go back to what Anita was saying, especially on like Marjorie Taylor Greene, I was seeing like her talk on CNN, which one is already rare for her.
Yeah.
And most of the reason why she was advocating for health care and government subsidies for that was because of people in her district. People were calling her up and expressing how upset they were about the government shutdown and lack of funding. It was kind of forcing her to listen to these things, where otherwise, she's been staunchly, pretty much anti-healthcare, anti-Affordable Care Act, like a lot of Republicans in rural, poor communities have been. But now it's kind of been forced to reckon with the fact that, hey, there's people in your district that need these things, and people are going to be encouraged to actually move forward and maybe pass a bill that would actually help people rather than focusing on partisan lines, because people are forced to reckon with it.
And again, in my classes, we have talked about the power of constituencies, the electoral connection, we've called it. People like Marjorie Taylor Greene want to get reelected. And that means getting votes. And so they want to do things that please their constituents. And there's another old saying that's politics makes for strange bedfellows. And Marjorie Taylor Greene is now siding with, at least on this one issue, with Democrats, oddly enough. And that's the power of the pull of constituency, the power of that electoral connection.
I kind of want to ask a question to the general floor. Who do you think is responsible for this shutdown? Because that's also been a debate happening online.
Just as context, and it's not saying who's responsible, but so you saw in 2018, Chuck Schumer and him and the members of his party that he was able to rally to vote no against the budget. Their main point of contention was the wall. Trump wanted billions of dollars to build a wall. They said no. Trump wanted that in the budget, and so the government was shut down for 35 days, the longest shutdown that we've ever had. And then in this year, you have Trump in the Oval Office, and the Republicans control this part of Congress. And once again, you have the Republicans supported in the Democrats voting no. Now, I'd have to read more into through the budget and see past the media lies to understand, well, why are they voting no? Did the Republicans try to to sneak something in there and then say, oh, well, why won't you vote yes? But that's just who's voting no. It's a pattern between the last shutdown as well as this one.
By the way, that just as a quick aside, that's another interesting point to make about it that you happen to mention very briefly in there. As these budget battles become more contentious and as these continuing resolutions or shutdowns get longer and longer and bigger, there is a greater incentive to sneak things in there, as you've said, to try and get pet projects, pork barrel legislation, earmarks as they're called. And by the way, those are other things that we've talked about in my classes, into these either the permanent budget agreements or the continuing resolutions. The longer they are, the more comprehensive they are, the more incentive politicians have to put their pet projects into there. You were waiting for us. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think both sides are partly to blame. I think both sides are playing this for the political long game. They're pointing fingers, they're coming up with excuses why it's not their fault and why it's someone else's fault. And they're using this debate over budget to get support for the midterm elections coming up in a year and a bit. And so it's just, neither side wants to basically flinch because it looks like they have lost then. So they're stuck in this staring contest where no one can do anything. And you do see people like Marjorie Taylor Greene falling outside of the tradition you would do. And for example, it is electable that if she does not pass this, she will probably lose because this is a big issue in her voting area. And so I think it's basically both parties are just locked in horns with each other and they refuse to budge or move. So it's kind of both of their faults.
Okay, just her district specifically, I don't think she's going to lose, but she feels uncomfortable enough.
She could get
politicians always do that. Even when they are almost guaranteed to be reelected, they still feel uncomfortable enough. They can never be comfortable enough in their own potential victory. And that's where she is, I think, right now. You've been waiting for a while.
Just to go on the question that we had of who is responsible, I agree a lot with him about it's both sides. They're having a standoff, but we're the ones getting shot. That's where we're at this moment.
Okay, somebody else had? Yeah, go ahead.
I was honestly going to say something kind of irrelevant, but just saying that Marjorie Taylor Greene, I think is worried about losing in the primaries, mostly because trying to keep that party affiliation, and a lot of these members are worried about getting primaried, especially if the Trump admin is really upset. We've seen the power of the Trump endorsement and that sort of MAGA movement, and that hey, if you're a member of the GOP and you step out of line with our movement, then you're going to get axed. And I think that is also part of the reason why there's been issues with the government shutdown. And same with the Democrats in another way of people are worried that, hey, there's a lot of dissatisfaction within the Democrats about the Trump administration. So if we are chill with the Trump administration and we pass a budget through Trump with the Republicans, then you're not doing enough. You're not stopping. Like we've seen with the No Kings protests, people are very unhappy. So the Democrats are at least trying to do something, I think, and whether it's right or wrong is really irrelevant. They just want to seem like they're doing anything.
Okay.
Yeah, I do want to agree with that. Democrats right now definitely have an identity crisis right now of where they should stand on how aggressive they should be. A lot of big name, not saying right now, I have not been keeping up too much with this government shutdown. I should, but I haven't. Big name Democratic lawmakers like Chuck Schumer or Hakeem Jeffries, they've been kind of, in a sense, pushovers. They haven't really been that antagonistic to the Trump administration. They've been very calm. They've been trying to seem like they're trying to be hey, we could still reach over the aisle. We'll be nice, even though the Republicans don't do the same back to them. They keep trying to be nice. So right now, it definitely seems like there's half the Democrats are like, we need to be aggressive, while another half are saying we should be a little bit more calm and go back to this more peaceful type settlement. But right now with Democrats, they seem like they're really at a crossroads of how they should approach this.
Back in March, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer actually did vote for the spending proposals.
Yeah.
He's not doing so this time around.
Yeah, that's what I was bringing up.
Yeah. Others, where are we headed with this? How long do you think it's going to last? As I mentioned before, I think one of the things we will see is something that you brought up before, is that there will begin to be serious negotiations about reopening the government when the public starts to react. Now, there have been some polls already. That's not quite the same thing. I mean, we've seen this in the past, when the public starts shouting about, well, what Marjorie Taylor Greene has been saying. My constituents are saying they're worried about not getting their health care benefits. When people start talking about not being able to receive government benefits, when they start missing checks, when construction projects stop, when there are slowdowns at airports especially, that's a big thing. That's when the movement will occur. But how long do you think that's going to be? I mean, we're already this is entering the third week now?
Mm-hmm. How long has it been? Has it been more than 2 weeks now?
Yeah.
They vote again
more
this.
than 2 weeks.
Oh my God.
Well, September 30th.
They vote again this.
Yeah, you're right.
This afternoon. They have their 9th vote.
Okay.
This afternoon.
September 30th, and so it's October 15th, so yeah.
Wow.
We just passed the 2-week mark, it's in the third week now.
Wow.
So how much longer do you think it is going to go? Are there any, can you think of any triggering events that might be coming up that might suggest to the public, hey, this is still going on? Or do you think it can go long term? Is this going to go for months? One of the things back in the 1990s, when Republicans were battling with the Clinton administration about the Clinton administration's budgets, were one of the talking points was, let's shut down the government and see if anybody notices. Because they were under the impression that, the average American isn't affected by what the federal government does, and so we can shut it down long term. Now, they found out pretty quickly, big time, that that's not the case. And they wound up after 2 or 3 weeks basically agreeing to the Clinton proposals. But what about now? Is that going to be the same case, or is it just going to be we're all going to go about our business, or is there going to be some triggering event where we suddenly start to say, hey, we really need this to get resolved?
I think it's also going to be one of the longer shutdowns that we've had as a country. And that once things I know everybody keeps talking about the insurance rates and stuff, once it actually, those things start affecting people, it'll probably still be a little bit, but I think that'll start to kick up, we have to do something. We have to reopen.
Now that'll affect a relatively large number of people, but even that, most Americans are not making use of the Affordable Care Act. So it may not affect a majority of Americans. Now maybe it will be enough, and obviously it's already gotten to one Northwest Georgia legislator, okay? So maybe it will be enough, but that's still not the majority of the public.
I think in another 2 weeks, when people miss their next paycheck, is when it's going to really hit hard. Missing one paycheck can be devastating to a family. Missing two might break their economic stability completely. And I think with the combination of people who are going to lose insurance about the end of the month because they can't afford it, or lose benefits at least for insurance.
So you think it would be kind of a gradual thing building over time as more and more things happen?
I think there's going to be people missing the 2-week paycheck, and then the insurance thing going to happen. I think they're happening a week from each other, right? Should be a week or so.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where the ball is going to really start going, because they're going to maybe start that and gather more and more support from there.
Okay.
I think a little bit of a turning point will be when the military servicemen lose another one of their paychecks. I mean that is something that kind of like unites the Democrats and the Republicans. Is like we love our veterans, we love our service members, and if they stop getting paid, not only does it upset the representatives, but that upsets a large portion of the population, not only military service members but their families. And that's gonna rile a lot of people up, and a lot of people won't stand for that and be okay with that. It's like, oh, we're not gonna pay the people who are defending our country just because we can't agree on a few things, because that argument is so easy to make, and people are gonna be so upset about it.
Okay, we're gonna go over here and then back this way.
If there weren't any socialized programs, would the Democrats have any ammunition or reason to not vote for a CR they already supported earlier?
Anybody want to address that?
I'm sorry, can you rephrase that a little bit? Are you talking about just like with social programs, if there weren't any, the
When you
Democrats...
tie people's portions of their incomes to money,
Well, the most
they receive from the government.
the most notable one is what we've been talking about, and that's the Affordable Care Premium subsidies, at least among discretionary spending. Obviously, there's Social Security and Medicare, but those are mandatory spending. That's not subject to being shut down. But yeah, again, I think the most notable ones are the Affordable Care Act premium subsidies. So anybody want it? You guys were gonna. Why don't you go
Yeah, I
ahead
was going to
first?
bring up something similar. Is that this is kind of a side effect of putting too many programs reliant on the federal government. Like so many state budgets, if they go without their federal paycheck, they shut down almost equally at the same time. So it's just too much of an over-reliance on the federal budget that now these processes are affected by the federal politics. Like healthcare should not be tied to the federal government because now it's shut down at a time we're about to enter flu season. It shouldn't be shut down. I mean, it's just a side effect of that.
Okay, you guys fight it out.
Okay, so what's the point of having like a federal government if we're not gonna like use it to redistribute and make sure that everyone has a fair living? Like I feel like we should take care of all of our citizens. I'm just directly fighting against the healthcare argument because I think I think we are a little reliant on the federal government, but the federal government is here to kind of protect us, to kind of apply safeguards. There will be a lot of people without healthcare if there wasn't federal healthcare. You kind of just, it's a slippery slope of like, if we don't spend on these social programs, then a lot of people go without. And you can bring up the counter argument. It's like, oh, if we never started spending on social programs in the first place, then we wouldn't have people reliant on them. Well, then we would just have people not with healthcare. That's kind of the deal here. And I don't know. I think the job of the federal government is to step in when private corporations aren't getting the job done. And if we rely too much on private corporations, then they can just do the same thing, except we don't have say in it.
Okay, just to kind of jump in really fast, I am going to have to head out for a class that they're consistently late for because they are also meeting off campus. But my Vice President, Ms. Sedona, will be taking over for that, and she'll be doing the outro today. So please be nice to her. Hope you all continue to have an amazing conversation.
Okay. Just to build on what you all were saying, there are arguments about specific programs like the Affordable Care Act subsidies, but it is also true, though, that the Constitution, right up at the beginning, says promote the general welfare, does it not? And that might justify these things. Although, again, we can certainly argue that it doesn't necessarily justify every last program. You were going to speak.
Yeah, just a general opinion. I think that the federal government sucks at most things that it does compared to the private industry. And I think that if you were simply to implement some regulations against things like price gouging, you saw, where they said, no, your insulin can't cost $1,000. That's ridiculous just because they have to buy it. But if you were to implement just some regulations like that, I think the private industry is much better at healthcare. In regards to the shutdown, the deadline to continue these subsidies to the Affordable Care Act is actually December 31st. If those that were hell-bent on getting those continued wanted to, they could still pass a budget and still debate those subsidies in Congress as its own resolution if they wanted to.
So then, oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
But that was kind of it. Yeah.
Okay, so then you would, if we delve more into the Affordable Care Act, then you would suggest that there might be some parts of that that are acceptable. For example, regulating what insurance companies can do. You mentioned price gouging, for example, preventing price gouging, maybe requiring certain kinds of coverage, et cetera, but there are other things that you're suggesting have gone too far.
Yeah. Okay. I think I'm usually for less government regulation, except for when the government affords a private company the privilege of being able to patent a necessary drug. So if the government is the one protecting use and making it so that only you can sell a certain medicine, then because they're protecting your business, I think it's now the government's business to tell you that you can't price gouge. But in completely unrelated things, I think that the private sector would do a lot better job than the federal government.
Okay, so Donna, go ahead.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think adding that to this resolution, regardless of, if it, or adding it in and then theoretically the resolution passed and we aren't in a shutdown, it just is pushing it off further and almost kind of worsening the problem. It has to be addressed eventually, and obviously it's a place where Republicans and Democrats split. But it's not like Trump didn't run on the idea of cutting funding in certain areas where he doesn't think it should be. Does that change the Affordable Care Act? No. But I feel like it's just kind of rolling the ball further, and it's not actually solving anything, except for politicians seeking re-election, like Democrats that do typically support the Affordable Care Act, and then now we have Marjorie Taylor Greene apparently also in support. So it's really only furthering their own political immediate gain. It's not solving anything in the long run.
Okay,
Yeah.
were you gonna?
I want to add something I saw about the Affordable Care Act, and the reason I get your point saying that, like, maybe it's a bit too much regulation, but if we do lose the Affordable Care Act, it is a massive snowball effect because it increases everyone's prices. And young people will drop it because they can't afford it. And because young people who traditionally use less health coverage drop it, and more people who use it more consistently will use it, they can justify increasing pricing. And it's not price gouging at that point, because they do have a justification. But because of that, not only have we lost the subsidies from the Affordable Care Act, but we've massively increased prices overall. And then we do leave a young part of the population without any health insurance because they simply cannot afford these now vastly increased prices.
Okay.
You also got to remember that the Affordable Care Act had a mandate where you had to get insurance and you had to pay a fine if you didn't have health insurance, and that skyrocketed health costs because obviously now if you're required to get, like right now we're required to have car insurance, and car insurance rates are just through the roof because you can't go without it. You have to buy it from some company. So I mean, I understand the argument that subsidized healthcare is for the welfare of the community, but when it's being shut down by federal politics and when it's causing ballooning prices, it's obviously having unintended consequences where you should say, okay, this isn't working. This should be relegated back to the private industry. And now that I said something Republican coded, I'm going to follow up with something Democrat coded. I also think this shutdown should go on for the rest of the term. All right.
Now, in fairness, I should point out that yes, there is a mandate that people obtain health care coverage, but Congress a few years ago
It's
zeroed
gone
out
now.
the penalty.
It's zero.
It's a mandate without any penalty whatsoever. Okay. And one of the things they found from that is that even when the penalty was zeroed out, people still went to the exchanges to obtain health care. So I just wanted to throw that out. You guys, find out.
I'll go quick. Yeah, I think my absolute worst fear with like the long-term snowball unintended consequences that you're talking about, as somebody who's half Canadian, is that we start to look like Canada. That's like the absolute worst case scenario. Could you imagine waiting 22 hours in an emergency room?
Or being told that, you should, consider euthanization.
Yeah.
Or, being
That's the
euthanized for a
solution.
basic mental
They're
illness
so
problem.
backed up that they're like, actually, let's just start taking them off one by one so we can catch up. That's a little dramatic, I know, but it's like eventually, this is just a band-aid fix, like I said earlier.
Okay.
I don't like y'all's argument. So, like, obviously, people are really upset about the state of healthcare in our nation because, I mean, like, if you can afford it, it rocks. But a lot of people can't afford it. It's really expensive. And we see in Canada where it's pretty much completely socialized that there are issues, but we're the richest country in the world, and we need to step in. I think the role of the federal government is to, like, I guess not afford us, but to make sure we keep our freedoms, right? We have the amendments in the Constitution to protect our freedom of speech, to protect our guns. I think we need the government to step in to be like, hey, people should have the freedom to be able to live without debt. They shouldn't have to choose either to go to the hospital and get treatment and be in debt, or maybe even die.
So the government should just accumulate $38 trillion of debt to make up for it.
We're already willing to have so much debt because of the military. Why can't we take care of our own people as well?
Should lower both.
I mean the deficit is like horrible. I think everybody can agree on that. You just look at it; it's like piling up by the day.
So you want that institution to tell people they should be free to live without debt? The institution that's $37 and counting trillion in debt, you want them to tell other people they should be free to live without debt?
And that is a little bit of hypocrisy. I understand. I think I think the main idea here, though, is to make sure the federal government protects its people, which it hasn't really been doing. I think
the government's there to protect people's rights, not to provide them.
Well, so protecting the rights of freedom of speech, the right to be alive. I'm sorry, what was the phrase you used earlier? The welfare of the...
Promote the general welfare.
The general
That's,
welfare.
One section 8.
Oh, very good. Okay.
Thank you. I think it's important to care for our people. And I understand that the federal government doesn't do a lot of things right, but that's something we should work towards.
When the government takes control of an industry, it stifles competition, which is going to determine the prices. If there's competition, then the prices will have to meet the market's demand.
I'm not like total socialized healthcare, but I do think like you brought up regulations. I think one of the what got us out of the Gilded Age was Teddy Roosevelt and Woodrow Wilson focusing on regulations and breaking up the trust.
The Federal Reserve.
Which is bad.
Well,
Sorry.
Okay, we've got a couple of people here waiting for a while, so go ahead.
I do want to say, I do think that is an honest concern about, is the government overstepping? Is the government doing things it shouldn't be doing? But as we've seen, the U.S. government has massively changed in its responsibilities and in its duties. We didn't have a national bank. It was an off and on debate. Now, we can't imagine that world at this point. We require it to function as an economy. And so I do think there is an honest debate to be made. Where should the government jump in and help? We saw with the Great Depression, bad banking led to the worst economic crash in our history. Has healthcare gotten to the point where it's so bad that it's causing Americans to die? And do we need to step in, let the government step in and take it? And that's not what this debate is about, but that there is always change what the government does and what it's expected to do and what it will do. And that is a worthwhile debate to have.
So do you think these government shutdowns that we're experiencing are kind of bumps along the way? Is that sort of what you're...
I think a lot...
Part of what you're
I think they're kind of unrelated. I just wanted to
They're
add that.
unrelated, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, you brought up the Gilded Age, which made me jump out of my chair. So, history time. Before we had socialized healthcare and socialized almost everything, we had mutual aid societies, which was like, African American women caring for African American women, laborers caring for laborers. We had all these organizations. Almost everyone was part of some society that cared for each other. And then we get the government stepping in and saying, no, we'll do it for you. And it eroded these institutions. There's no longer these societies where you care for your neighbor or whatever. So it's not like healthcare didn't exist before Obama came in. We had it. We had charities caring for the poor. We had soup kitchens. We had stuff like that. And obviously, the Gilded Age sucks, but it sucked for different reasons. Healthcare wasn't a major concern back then.
Speaking of Section 8, Section 8 housing is actually a fantastic example of this. Unless you're a child or you're disabled, it's not the government's responsibility to earn your living for you. I think that welfare for a very short period of time, just to get back on your feet, especially when you have kids, is a fantastic idea. But the idea that the government should subsidize your life for you, that's not charity. Using other people's money to spend on the less fortunate is not charity, that's virtue signaling. It's using your own money to donate to charity, that's actually charity. You're right, those organizations, those mutual aid organizations were great at what they did, but that was actual charity, because it's me saying I'm going to help these people, not, hey, I want to vote that someone else should have to help you.
And I want to add on to both of you guys. I think like the way our society was set up back then was focused on the freedom to kind of associate, right? But we haven't really had that anymore. We don't have these mutual aid societies. That's kind of where issues have been propping up, and where arguments for government interference, like I've been making, step in, because we have lost those organizations. So what's going to take its place? Are we going to all of a sudden make sure, okay, we're gonna like just bring in all these mutual aid societies, which would be great. And going on the charity aspect, again, I'm bringing up the Gilded Age, but like Carnegie and them, they donated so much of their wealth because they believed that was the right thing to do. But we don't have the same idea when it comes to Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg. We have a lot of issues of like, we aren't being charitable. It would be nice and it's great to have these charitable ideas and to share with the people, but we haven't had that. So at one point, do we have to step in as a people through the federal government?
I just have one thing, because you mentioned billionaires. I was talking about this earlier in a different class. Most of billionaires' wealth, so there's just context, is obviously not in liquid money. Everyone here knows that. So a lot of Jeff Bezos' wealth is in the company of Amazon that employs how many tens of thousands of people. And you look at CEOs and the owners of companies like Coca-Cola and Amazon and Tesla with Elon Musk. Even if you were to dismantle all those companies, fire all those people, liquidate all of that wealth, it adds up to about 6.7 trillion. So now with tens and tens of thousands of fired people, if you were to take all of the billionaires' wealth in the entire nation and divide it among everyone, it'd be about 19,000 per person, and then it's done. I don't think that these billionaires' wealth, no matter how much you tax them, could even remotely subsidize the general welfare or the people that need it. You'd also be dismantling a large part of the economy. I just don't think that makes sense.
So we still have some of those organizations that we talked about. Just in North Georgia, we have Meals by Grace, and they do provide food to communities in low-income areas. But they are increasingly having more and more people come to them, and we might see those organizations come back even with government subsidies, because there is definitely they do help. And they definitely are getting people to come there, and they are giving help.
Okay, last word, and then we're going to have Stone take us out.
There's a great book by a historian from the University of Alabama who talked about FDR so I mentioned like African American mutual aid societies, how they were kind of like resistance or organizations against like local politics, against segregation and racial oppression. But FDR comes in, and as aside from expanding government subsidies and government regulation in the private healthcare, these organizations go away. You don't have these resistance organizations that were used as kind of like a coalesced social identity. And there's like some question from historians. It's like, was this an intentional effect of FDR? Did he want to get rid of these racial identity organizations to expand the government, to make it, to quiet the little ones? So there's that. And also, I understand the argument of we have to care for people, but it becomes obvious when, so we have organizations like the one you mentioned and government subsidies, but we're still seeing increasing lines, increasing people that have to go to these organizations when we have both of them. And we're like, healthcare currently sucks. Everyone here can agree that the healthcare market sucks. We're also in the period of time where the government is most involved in healthcare, and as we keep going along, they're more involved, and healthcare keeps getting worse and worse. So like, I mean, I get the like correlation doesn't mean causation, but like it's starting to get close. Like we're starting to see the more the government gets involved in private healthcare, the more things start sucking in the private healthcare market. It's just from an economic standpoint, it's not great to put something as serious as healthcare in the hands of the federal government, which is like heavily politicized. And now people are going to go without healthcare for this flu season because we're arguing politics.
Okay, do you have information on next week or other things that we're going to do?
I first want to say thank you guys all for coming out. I love that we have a place we can all come and freely exchange ideas, and everybody is allowed to say their piece. It really does mean a lot to me. We have next week Dr. Miner. He's one of our faculty members here at UNG. He teaches global issues. He has a focus in Middle Eastern politics. And he's going to be coming in to talk about foreign policy, which should be interesting given the recent developments in the Middle East. And then the week following, Tuesday the 28th, we have a Halloween party. We're going to have food. It's going to be really fun, just a time for everybody to come hang out. I guess you can talk politics if you want to. Nobody's going to stop you. But yeah, come dressed up, come have fun. We have our invitations here, and then you can also join the group me to find more information or find us on UNG Connect or Instagram.
All right.
Thank you.
See you next week.
This is a good discussion. Yeah, healthcare debate. That'd be good. Yeah.